Humbity diddledy hidely dido, humbity diddledum, huddledy dido, humbity diddle, humbity dido, humbity diddlum die. Right, boys and girls, where are we today?
At the pool of Muckhart again.
We're at the pool of Muckhart again, but we're at a very special part of it, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we're at the church, and our friends that are with us today, they have a very strong connection to the church. And this little memorial here is to their great-great-grandfather, the Reverend John Edgar Kearns.
He sounds very important.
Well, he was a minister of Muckhart Parish from 1907 till 1933 by Catherine herself in 2007. So this is quite a fantastic memorial to this gentleman. Now, he wasn't just a minister. Now, he came from Ireland, or not, was it Northern Ireland?
No.
Came from Ireland, yeah. Not only was he the minister here, but he also opened the golf course. He negotiated with all the local landlords, landowners, to create some free time leisure activities for the people of Muckhart. And he was also involved in lots of other things that happened around here. Now, the Muckhart Church is a very small church. And there are records going back 1,000 years from before but certainly back to even the Celtic times. There was said to have been, or maybe not a building, but there certainly was ministries held right here. Now, one of the reasons that I like this place so much is because of what's right behind it, and you can just see it starting to come into focus. And that's a hill called Seamab, or in Celtic times, Seamab. And the reason that this hill is quite important to me is that my grandmother and grandfather actually, their home looked out onto this. And they had two dogs, one named C and one named Mab. Now, I never ever knew C, he was gone before my time, but I knew Mab very well. Now, when we have a look about here, it's absolutely beautiful, isn't it, Justin?
Yeah.
Now, there is an ancient tradition here of a fair to St Cuthbert in the pool of Muckhart, which indicates that there was a Celtic church here, because that was in a time, and during that time, and even when Christianity came here, it took another couple of 100 years for it to fully cement itself. Now, let's just have a wee closer look at Seamab here. What a hill that is. And we got a fair old view just down the Ochils as well here.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am the bike of wisdom.
You're the biker of wisdom. Yes, you are.
Not really. Sometimes.
Now, we've talked how this is called a parish, the parish of Muckhart. Now, the word parish comes from a Latin word called parochia, to mean an ecclesiastical district. And Muckhart was one of the first to be delineated as such. But also, originally what these parishes would have been was an extension of the monastery or the local church. And they would pay their dues to that church. But here in Muckhart, it seems to have been one of the very few free parishes, which was quite unusual. Now, as we're coming up here, we can start to see, we can't see the house, but you can see the road and you can see the trees. Now, this was the original house, still is today, Ballyusk. And the church is built right here on the side of the main house.
I've got a question.
Oh, what's your question?
Why was it not called Parish of Muckhart and it was called Pool of Muckhart?
So the pool of Muckhart is part of the parish. So what you've got at the top is the Yetts of Muckhart. Right up at the top, that's where we walked down yesterday. And up there, that's where they held the toll house. So you had the bit of the Yetts of Muckhart there, and then we had the pool of Muckhart down here. So when I was growing up, I always wondered why it wasn't just called Muckhart like Crooked Devon or like any of the other villages, how it had these different names.
Yeah.
Now just have a wee look at the church for this side. What do you think, Chloe? It's really pretty, eh? It just sits all on its own, up on the top of the hill. Very beautiful. And then we look out this way, we can see all the way out towards Stirling and down to Alloa. What do you think? Now you can see down into Muckhart down there, eh?
Yeah. I forgot how high we actually are.
We are really high, aren't we? And even within Muckhart, which is very, very high, we are probably at one of the highest points, aren't we?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Why does that all feel
Oh, keep off the grass. You can't go in the grass, Justin.
Why?
Because there's people buried there. You have to stay on the paths.
People.
Yeah, it's a graveyard. So you can't go on the grass. Right, we're going to go back up.
Yeah. How do you feel about being here?
We'll take a wee walk and have a wee look at the sign up there to see what it tells us.
Yeah.
Because I love a sign. We love reading our signs. Was that some water out in case some animals come past there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? Oh, there's a wee doggy. Out for his walk. Right, let's see what it says up here. Okay. So, let's zoom it out a bit so everyone can see. So, historic Kirkyards Trail. So in Scotland, this is what we call a church, a kirk. That's our old name. So the OLP's Historic Kirkyards project repaired and conserved wall stone structure within 7 historical burial grounds along the hillfoots at Logie Kirk, Alva Old Kirk, Tillycutry Upper, Tillycutry Lower, Tate's Tomb, Dollar, Muckhart. 6 of the burial grounds are or were adjacent to parish churches, but Tate's Tomb is a rare private burial ground. There are late Norse influenced hogbacks. What's a hogback? Do you know what that is?
No.
You don't know either? I don't know either, so we're going to have to find out what that is. In Logie Old Kirk, so we're going to go there. And Tillycutry Upper. And the kirkyards also contain many late 17th to 18th century gravestones decorated with trade and morality and immorality. So here's a great wee picture. So we've got the whole of the Elfoot. So we've got from Stirling, coming along past Blair Logie, along to Menstrie Castle and Menstrie Glen, along to Alva, and then just up there we've got Alva Glen, and then we've got the Silver Glen. Chloe, come and see this. This is where we did our other video, right here at the Silver Glen. Do you remember? And then you can also see the old medieval road. And then we've got Tillycutry Glen. We've been there as well, haven't we? And then as we come further along, we've got Dollar, Castle Campbell, Dollar Glen, the Mill Green. Oh, I love the Mill Green. And then along to Muckhart, where we are just now. So let's have a wee read here. So, Muckhart. There was a church here in the early 13th century when it was in the patronage of the Bishop of St Andrews. That's what we were talking about yesterday. Oh, and this is the man we were talking about. Bishop William Lamberton built a house further west at Castleton in about 1320. The church still remained independent at the Reformation in 1560. By September 1586, however, it was described as at a very evil point, especially in the roof, which is rotted and ruined. The congregation was instructed to pay for the repairs, oh dear, and told that there would be no more burials within the church. Oh my word. On the 30th of November 1591, Alexander Simpson arrived as the new minister, though the parishioners were slow to provide him with an adequate stipend. So it sounds like he wasn't a very popular man to begin with, does it? So, in 1836, Reverend James Tamson noted that the manse was newly built, but that the church was rather ruinous and not sufficient for accommodating the population. It was rebuilt in 1838, probably on the same site as its predecessors, in the plain late Georgian style, with fine bell coat. So here's a lovely old map of what was here before, with the manse, the kirkyard and the church. Now, what else? So that's an 1862 map. We've got some nice old tombs. In 1836, the Reverend Tamson mentioned these date stones now built in the east wall, which at that time were in different parts of the church. They marked completion, repairs, or improvements in buildings. So these things are really handy, because without them, we'd have no idea what happened here. So, this box was erected by William Henry Bruce Ogilvie in memory of his grandmother, Mrs. Glenn, owner of the Cowden Estate. So we like to go there to the Japanese Gardens. That's part of the Cowden Estate. Who had raised him and his three brothers, Countess of Airlie. Lovely, lovely. And sold it to John Christie. So yeah, so we know of Ella Christie, who made the Japanese Garden. So this is the Ogilvies were obviously the family that had the estate before the Christies. Oh look, so here we go. This has got some good stuff here. So, John Christie came to live at Cowden in 1866 with his wife Alison and family. Their son John died in 1872. Alice, the youngest, married Robert King Stewart of Murdiston in October 1881. So 1881, that's the same year that they were digging over Lendrick Muir. John Christie died in 1902, leaving the bulk of his wealth to the Christie Female Industrial Homes, which he had founded and endowed. His will was contested and a settlement was reached whereby his daughters and the homes shared in the fortune. So yeah, that's the story I had heard. So when this gentleman died, his daughter wanted to inherit the estate, but the rules at the time really didn't allow for that. So I think this is Ella Christie here. This lady here contested the will and got a share of it. Now, in 1907, Ella began to create at Cowden with the advice and help of a woman called Takehanda and Professor Jijo Susuke Shorukun, the place of pleasure and delight. Do you know what place they're talking about?
Japanese Gardens?
The Japanese Gardens. And how do you feel about the Japanese Gardens?
Pleasure and delight.
Pleasure and delight. So yeah, Ella Chris, she would be very happy to know that a couple of hundred or 100 odd, 150 years later, someone was getting pleasure and delight from it. So, a remarkable garden laid out according to the traditions of the Imperial Palace Gardens of Japan. So those gardens weren't just a copy of a Japanese garden. They were a copy of the Imperial Palace Gardens. That's how special they were. Now, this young chap here was one of the gardeners. The simple granite stone commemorates Shinzaburo Matsuo, who arrived at Cowden in 1925, having lost his family to an earthquake to tend the Japanese gardens. He lived alone in the estate and became a well-known character in Clackmannanshire, looking after the gardens for many years. Now, I don't know if it was him, but I heard a story from Mrs. Kearns from Merrill, who told us that one day this gentleman was going to a funeral, I think out in the Kirkcaldy way. And he was all dressed up in his finest clothing. And when everyone saw him walking along, guess what they thought?
What?
They thought that he was the Emperor of Japan. They thought the Emperor of Japan was walking about Scotland. How cool is that? Not very cool? Okay. Isabella, or Ella Robertson Christie, was the elder daughter of John Christie. As a young woman, she had visited Europe, the Middle East, with her family. After her father's death, she continued to live at Cowden Castle, but was also an intrepid explorer, travelling to the Far East, Russia and America. Wow! She is said to have been the first British woman to have visited what is now Uzbekistan. Now that is an explorer, isn't it? She died in 1949, and her great-nephew, Sir Robert Stewart of Arndine, inherited the Cowden Castle. The castle was eventually demolished in 1952. Now, I think we might just...
Wait, hold on a second.
Oh, what is it?
The key here says there's literally a bit for ponding right here.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll need to find that. Come up here and have a look at this, because this is the Christie family or family mausoleum type thing. So it's built into the side of the church here. So have a look at this. Look at this. Look at this monument here. Isn't this fantastic? What does it say up the top there? Let's have a wee look. In Christo Solus Salius. Do you know your Latin enough to tell us what that means, Chloe? No? Me neither.
People need to pay.
Right, okay. So, and then we have Ella Christie there. And here's some of the other families. And then here we have the, John Kirk. Oh, and here, look at this, look at this. So, this is the grave that we've just read about of the Japanese gardener. And look at this, somebody has brought him up a flower. How fantastic is that?
Very nice.
Very thoughtful, isn't it? Right, well, we have one wee last look around before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
So let's just look at all these flowers here. This is fantastic. People really, really care for this little bit around here, don't they? And if we look through here, we can just see through the trees there. We can just see the golf club that we had a wee peek at yesterday as well. There we go. And then further over to the left, we've got the Cleash Hills, moving on to an entirely different part of the land. Right, boys and girls, we're going to say goodbye.